I'm Dave Asprey. I'm this week's Man of the Hour, and we're going to talk about all of the things that give you more power to be an entrepreneur.
And this is Dave Asprey, everybody. This is the entrepreneur, the author, the founder of Bulletproof and Upgrade Labs, and someone everyone considers a lifestyle guru and the master of biohacking. Everybody who's tuning in now, thank you for clicking play when you could have chose any other podcast. Dave also has an exciting podcast announcement we'll get into. He is somebody that I met in person just about 2 months ago in Florida at the Biohacking conference. And when I met him, there was so much that I knew we could offer to anybody tuning in right now. So Dave, thank you so much.
Hey, Justin, I'm happy to be here for you.
You're the best, man. So again, I do want to go into biohacking and then kind of start talking a little bit about what your life has looked like as an entrepreneur, the things you may have learned, what that journey's been like. But let's start with all things biohacking. So if you don't mind, and I'm sure you've, defined this and spoken to it for so long now, but I want to educate folks for a moment, if you don't mind telling us what is biohacking, and then we'll go into some more.
Biohacking is a new word in the English language as of 2018. It was about one of 800 words they added. And my name's actually in the dictionary because I'm the guy who started the movement of biohacking. And the original definition that I worked really hard on was the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside of you so that you have full control of your own biology. And it was something I designed to unite people want to live forever. People want to be the fastest on earth, the smartest on earth, want to have the most energy, want to be the best entrepreneur, the best parent. But people who are just saying, look, I want more and I want my body to do what I want. And this came out because I used to weigh 300 pounds because I had such bad brain fog, just cognitive dysfunction. As I was growing the first stage of my career in Silicon Valley, I bought disability insurance because the doctors all said everything was fine. There was no evidence, but I was just like, I don't know. So I went out and I decided I was going to hack it. And that was what led to this.
And this many years later too, I mean, and you'd mentioned the word movement. I think it's very much a movement. Anybody who wants to, tap into their health and why they're feeling certain ways can ultimately study and redefine it for themselves. What was that moment though? I feel like when you were in Silicon Valley, there may have been some other things outside of your weight that told you like, holy shit, I'm just going to go down this road and ultimately, be the father of biohacking.
Well, I went through, and I realized I had arthritis in my knees since I was 14. And then I started saying, since I'm just not feeling right and I'm fat and my body hurts all the time, my back hurts all the time. Some days I'm just not particularly dialed in. I'm going to go to the doctor. And the doctor had nothing to offer me at all. And I just got a little bit more and more concerned. And I also realized if I'm going to grow my career, but I feel like I have the accelerator pushed all the way down to the floor and I'm slowing down, I can push harder, but there's no more accelerator to push. I was using my willpower all the time. It's actually a really scary place to be. So for me, one of the big ones was when I went to the doctor and he said, maybe you should try to lose weight. And I'm like, hey, I worked out an hour and a half a day, 6 days a week. Even if I was sick, even if I was tired, no matter what, I went on a low fat, low calorie diet. And at the end of that, I still had a 46-inch waist and I weighed 300 pounds. It doesn't work. And he looked at me like I was a liar. And it's like, yeah, you were sneaking Snickers bars. It's like, no, that's not what's going on here. It's something else. But what really pushed me in this direction is that, yeah, I spent $300,000 that I shouldn't have had to spend in order to get my brain back. What people really want that separates biohacking from, being a health nut or whatever you want to call it, it's that I care about human performance. I want to show up better than Mother Nature would have normally had me do. I want to be as good as I can be so I can do more good stuff in the world. And so this is not about a sick person getting healthy, although there's a lot of sick people who become biohackers so they can become healthy. And it's not about a healthy person saying, oh, I want to be healthy. No, you wake up in the morning, you're like, I want to be powerful. I want to show up perfectly with absolute, what's the word I'm looking for? With absolute integrity throughout everything I do today. And that's going to require more willpower and more energy than I think I have. I want that. And that's just not health. It's something different. And that's why biohacking matters.
Oh, I've always agreed with you since we met in person, because I think and this goes for everything you say on Instagram with your clips and the way that you're educating people. But something I remember you saying at the conference was that when you have the opportunity and the technology and that drive to optimize the human experience, you said the words "why not," and that stuck with me for a while because you were like, you know, if you have the resources and if you want to be the best that you can be for all hours, like you had said, and be able to perform at your highest potential, why not do it this way? But then I know, and we'll get into more of the misconceptions and benefits and such in a second, but I know that people who might be turned off by biohacking, a lot of it just is going to come down to maybe the time it's going to take or the money it would cost. So I want to talk about that with you and how it could, you know what I mean?
I'm laughing because people always throw impediments down. Look, here's the deal. Everything that we know about biohacking, there's a pathway, there's a signal, you get it into the body. And what I do is I go out and I try the stuff that literally the billionaires are doing to live forever. Right. And I write about it and I say, here's why it works. And we're working on this pathway. Oh, and by the way, here's the $50 way to activate the pathway. And here's the free way to activate the pathway. And if people are worried about spending time on biohacking, the whole point of Upgrade Labs is that you're stupidly spending time in the gym if you even go, which most people don't. You just have the membership to feel good about yourself. I can give you cardio 8 times faster than what you're doing today. I can put muscle on for you 3 times better than you do today. And in the spare time, I can train your brain with clinical grade tech that'll put you in states that would have taken you many years to reach if you were just doing normal meditation or listening to some kind of sound files. And by the way, I'll fix your metabolism because we can train your cells to work better, all in less time than you spend in the gym today. So I like the gym. You can keep going to the gym if you want. I'm just going to help you recover faster. So how is it you're spending more time biohacking? What's going on is you'll have to learn a little bit, but when you do this, the return of free time and more importantly, free energy is so high that it's unbelievable. And the evidence for this, people have lost 1 million pounds since I wrote the Bulletproof Diet using that kind of stuff. But much more importantly are the people who wrote in and said, I went on this program. I cannot believe how my brain feels. I just need an hour less sleep every night. I got a $30,000 promotion. I started 2 companies, that kind of a thing, because what's holding you back, Justin, what's holding everyone back, it's energy. And every day you make so much energy and then you spend so much energy. And if you suck at making energy, we can fix that. And if you waste all the energy, you can fix that too. And some of those are hardware problems. In other words, your metabolism is broken, or you're spending energy because you have inflammatory pathways and you're missing this or that. But some of them are also software problems because you spend all your time worrying that no one's going to love you and you're actually an entrepreneur because you were bullied. And I've spent 6 months of my life with electrodes on my head at 40 Years of Zen, my neuroscience company, fixing that stuff. So it's just simply a matter of being efficient at making and allocating energy in your day. And you find out there's 3 of you inside your head that are capable of doing what you want. But right now, 2 of them are working against you and you don't even know it.
We don't do sound effects, so I'm going to make one. Every time Dave talks, I get smarter. I'm not kidding. And if you're listening, you probably just got quite smarter as well. There's a lot of misconceptions. And one of them, I guess, would be exactly what you just debunked, which is the time that it would take. And it's actually making your life more efficient, which is so cool to hear, because it's like anybody who steps into something that's a little bit uncomfortable for them, especially when it comes to science that they might not even be educated on, they're just going to like try to dismiss it no matter what. But what are the other misconceptions that you have far off and been like, what the hell? That's not even, it can't even be true, right?
Here's one that drives me nuts. We all need 8 hours of sleep a night.
Oh, yeah.
About 10 years ago, I came across a study. It was the biggest study ever done collecting sleep data from 1.2 million people over 3 years. And it was so much data, they couldn't crunch the numbers. And someone found all the data on paper, put it into a modern system that could crunch the data and said, oh, that's weird. The people who live the longest are the ones who sleep 6.5 hours a night. And people who sleep 8 hours die more of all causes than those people. And people who sleep 9 hours are at much more risk than people who sleep 6 hours. So what does this mean? It means that healthy people need less sleep. And if you're worried about wasting time on biohacking, for the past 8 years, according to the tech I use to monitor my sleep, and I've monitored my sleep for 14 years because I sucked so hard at sleeping. I was just a bad sleeper. I go to sleep, but you wake up, you don't feel good. Well, I get an average of 6 hours and 28 minutes of sleep per night, and I have for all that period of time. And I usually get an hour and a half to 2 hours of deep and an hour and a half to 2 hours of REM sleep every single night. When I started on this, I got 5 minutes of deep sleep and 5 minutes of REM sleep on the average night. So the ROI on my sleep rocks. I get more sleep than a 20-year-old on average, more quality sleep, and I can do it in less time. So what would happen if you're listening to this going, wait, you mean I could sleep less and I would be more energetic? Yeah. In fact, when I started Bulletproof, I was a VP at a publicly traded company making, VP level salary with stock options. And I started Bulletproof. I just said, fine, I'll sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. And I did it for a year and a half. Probably wasn't good for my biology, but I could do it. Right. So you have all that free time, that free energy, and it's not because you're restricting your sleep. So that alone, that extra hour, hour and a half, or maybe 2 hours that you get by fixing your biology pays dividends for the rest of your life. You can read for an hour. You can listen to an extra educational podcast like this one. You can do anything you want. It's just free time, and you'll live longer. Oh, there's that.
Oh, we're gonna bring that one up. Trust me, that's coming. There's a lot of motion in that I think that people would totally be very interested in learning about Mr. 180. And I commended you for that when I first met you. I was like, I think you're going to get there. And it's because of everything that you're doing now. Okay, wait, quickly on sleep. How can you train your brain to even sleep and practice getting the 1.5 of deep and 1.5 of REM? Like, I just fall asleep and wake back up hoping that like I didn't die. So what mentally happens for you?
Okay. Go to sleepwithdave.com and I'll spend 2 weeks teaching you for free everything that I know about sleep. So that's the easiest URL to remember ever. But, and then I go through the free stuff. I go through the tech stuff. But the number one thing is get a data signal. I use a combination of the Aura Ring and an app called Sleep Space. And I'm an investor and advisor of both companies. I've talked to the head scientist. This is validated real technology. I charge the ring about once a week, and it gives me a signal every morning that says how much deep, how much REM, and how recovered is my biology. And that's a really important number for entrepreneurs, because a lot of us are like, well, I'm not only going to be an entrepreneur, I am going to date a supermodel or two. I am going to run at the Kona Ironman, and I'm going to fly around the world. And what's going on is you're actually burning the candle in the middle and at both ends. And it's going to show in your recovery score. And you're saying, oh, well, that's interesting. Maybe I ought not to do heavy endurance training while I'm traveling around Earth and raising money for my company, because it's actually not okay on my biology. Even though I want to do it, my biology isn't showing signals that it's working. So I need to basically be kind to myself for a little while. And that's the hardest thing for entrepreneurs. There's always more work. So why would we cut something off there? But having a data point to tell me matters. Second thing, like easy stuff. Your bedroom needs to be blacked out. No LEDs, no light coming around the curtains. It's a one-time cost for better blackout curtains with Velcro on the edges. That one change, 69% reduction in depression by cutting out the amount of light that leaks around the average curtain in the average city in a study of 800 men. And it's probably worse for women, actually. So wow. Okay. These are simple things. They just don't teach you this. And in fact, we didn't even know circadian biology. And the reason this works is 2 billion years ago, when single-celled organisms first evolved, in the middle of the day, the sun was overhead with bright light, full spectrum light. And that's when it was warmest, brightest, and we had the most food. So if you want to sleep really well, it should be cool, it should be dark, and there shouldn't be any food available. And then all the systems in the body know that. So what do I do if I go to bed? I put on my True Dark glasses. Well, this is one of the companies in my portfolio that I started. I wrote the patents for it. And we make a kind of glasses that go far beyond blue blocking, but you wear these and you want to go to sleep. In fact, I have no jet lag anywhere on the planet. But those are simple, cheap things to do. And just sleepwithdave.com. I teach everything. My challenges are free. Same thing. I'm Fast This Way, intermittent fasting. It's cheaper to skip breakfast, and you don't have to take the time and energy to make breakfast, and you have more energy that morning, and then your metabolism gets better over time. I'm pretty sure the ROI on skipping breakfast is very high because the cost was less than zero. You actually got paid right up front in time. So Fast This Way, or probably Fast with Dave works too. .com. Those are important skills, but then in our minds, to your question, Justin, people say it seems like too much effort. And all I'm going to tell you is that everything I teach is how to have more energy in return for what you do, which means it's not effort. You do a little bit, but you get so much back that the effort just didn't even feel like effort anymore.
Oh my gosh. So we need to go to sleep with Dave. We need to biohack, and we need to make our lives more efficient. So
Yeah.
more on you.
Okay.
I can't give you enough thanks and gratitude for everything that you just said, because I can't imagine how many times you've had to talk about it, and for you to say it again on this podcast means everything.
It's part of my mission is to share this stuff. If someone had just told me this when I was 19, everything I've written, there's 3,000 posts and 1,000 hours of video on my site, and it's all free. Right. I have a mentorship group called OurUpgradeCollective.com, and all these things. Look, if someone had just told me if this was available, I would not have weighed 300 pounds. I would not have had 3 knee surgeries. I would not have been an asshole for at least 10 years of my professional career and most of my young adult life. It's all about energy, and you can have a lot more. Geez, it's not that hard.
And a lot more good energy too. You mentioned it when you're going through a lot of shit, like being super overweight, having less energy. You're not going to want to give good, positive attention to the people around you too, which is something I love advocating for.
In fact, can I talk a little bit more about that, like on the entrepreneur side?
Please, please.
Throughout my work, there's this equation of all life, which sounds pretty hard scientifically, but it's not. All life on Earth, whether it's a slime mold, it's a skunk, a tree, or a human, it just doesn't matter. It follows an operating system inside each cell. And a lot of what we do as entrepreneurs is influenced by that. And the cells get to sense the world before our brain gets it. Our brain has about a quarter-second delay between reality happening and us noticing it happens with our conscious brain. And if you don't believe that, you ever lean on a hot stove and then pull your hand away before you get burned?
Oh, yeah.
Most people, okay, well, and then you go, good thing I moved my hand. You didn't move your hand. Who moved your hand? You didn't decide to do that. It moved and you took credit for it. So what moved it was the automated parts of your body. It's an operating system thing. You're an app sitting in your operating system. And the operating system's like handled. Well, that's an example of the first of these 4 laws that we all follow in order. The first one is, if something is possibly dangerous, run away from, kill, or hide from it. This is fear, and it gets 10 times more attention and focus than it really needs. And the second one is eat everything. This is feed. And that's because throughout all of the last 2 billion years, how many times have animals starved to death? Or bacteria or mold, it doesn't matter. All life will do that. So eat everything. That gets 5 times more attention than it needs. So if you're wondering why you ate the entire box of donuts, it was your operating system operating on the second principle, because you weren't actually being hunted right then according to your operating system. So there wasn't anything to be afraid of, so you ate all the donuts. The third F word, all life has to do it to stay alive forever. Do you know that one?
I've never heard it.
But I mean, it's so you just imagine if you want to stay alive for multiple generations, it's an F word, a biological imperative. What would that be?
Fate.
I was trying to get you to drop an F-bomb, but
I was
thinking for fertility would be the one, but okay. But I mean, you can go there, just go straight down to bone. I gotcha. What you're doing there, though, is 3 times more energy. So you think about it, okay? Every bad day you've been on, every time you've eaten all the donuts, and every time you procrastinated or you didn't step up or all those things, every single one of them operating system settings that you don't know you have, all of them happen before you get to think. And that is why awareness is so important for entrepreneurs. Because if you feel threatened when someone walks into your senior leadership meeting because they said the same thing a bully said in 5th grade, you're going to feel at the operating system level what you felt when the bully did that. And you're going to act not from your brain, you're going to act from the operating system, and you're going to run fear, food, fuck. And the good news is if you have enough energy to handle all those things and maintain your presence in your brain, and it is an energetic thing, then the final F word comes out, which is friend. Because all life on earth will support other life. Will support our elders. Will take care of someone else's child's in front of a car. You're going to go move them, even if you might die. And you don't have to think. That's your operating system. We are wired to support each other. We specialize. Doesn't mean we're not assholes. Because we are, and we do all sorts of bad things. Just look at all the government stuff around the pandemic. But we also are wired at our core to take care of others. So we don't do that if we're starving. We don't do that if we're unloved, and we don't do that if we're afraid. But this is why, as an entrepreneur, your energy matters so much, because you have to have enough to take care of the fear, to take care of the hunger, to take care of the loneliness, and still do the fourth F word. And if you can do that, you'll kick ass.
I was going to wait to bring I love all of that. I was going to wait to bring this point up, but you brought it up first. So I want to bring it up now, which is that I could imagine your leadership style being very friendly and community driven. And I've heard you say this several times before, but when you were and are building teams, you have such a deep understanding of what it means to be a friend. So can we talk about that for a moment? Because I feel like you having understood the other three F's exactly like you had said it allows you to treat people a certain way in and out of the business, I'm sure. But in general, when you look at it, Dave, what goes through your mind knowing what you know right now at your age and having had all your experiences when it comes to just relationships in general, business or not?
Well, the hardest part, if you're a mission-driven entrepreneur who sees the world the way I just described, especially with a focus on helping others, it actually makes you a target for people who take advantage of the fourth F word. These are ego-damaged people, narcissists, and they're not narcissists by choice. They're usually narcissists by trauma, or they're sociopaths. About 4% of people out there are those. And they'll come in and they'll actually take advantage of your friendliness and all of that. And they'll tell you what you want to hear. They'll act like they're friendly, and they'll come in and sabotage your company. I've had it happen 3 times. I've had it happen at the board level. I've had multiple companies pretty much shredded by being too friendly. Right. But that said, you can choose to just, be super suspicious of everyone, which means you don't get stuff done. Or at this point, I just put systems in place to detect, cultural systems in companies to detect when someone's acting out of compliance. And you can spot narcissists because they will make a mistake, whether it was intentional or not, but then they don't take credit for it. They blame it on someone else when you call them on it, instead of going, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm so sorry. How do I make it right? Instead, they go, it was Johnny, it was Susie, and it couldn't have been me. And you're like, you're standing in a room full of bodies. There's blood on your hands and the door was locked. It wasn't me, because I would never do that. And like, the truth is you would do that, and you did do that, but to yourself, you haven't admitted it. So the problem is that the more of a good person you are, the more of a target for manipulators you'll be. So the hardest part of growing as an entrepreneur is being able to sort the people who either are intentionally bad or unconsciously bad and get them the hell away from you.
Yeah, because it goes back to that friendliness. And we were in grade school. I mean, anybody who went through grade school knows this, but there were different kinds of people through that when you started making friends. And it's like, you got the nice ones, you have the bullies, and there's all these different kinds of people. And what are your thoughts on this big idea that some things never change when it comes down to what you just said? Maybe the narcissist was always a narcissist, but for some reason that never changed. And how,
So
yeah.
it depends. I've shifted my thinking here over the years. One of my companies, 40 Years of Zen. This is a very high-end brain upgrade. We've had about more than 1,000 entrepreneurs and similar type celebrities, pro athletes come through. It's a 5-day intensive brain upgrade. But a big part of a brain upgrade is not wasting energy on stuff that isn't real. So, if you're still responding to whatever happened in first grade, which everyone does because we're alive, we're supposed to, our body was trying to figure out how to survive in the world before your brain was formed. So it's an automated system sort of thing. So it's a major thing with entrepreneurs, lots of stuff that you can just drop so you have free energy like that. And I used to believe that, look, you can take someone and show them what's going on, kind of get rid of the garbage, and you'll always end up with a nice person. And I've just disproven that over time. There is some small percentage of people who, even if you do all that stuff, they still are the sociopaths and psychopaths, and they aren't probably treatable. That's just who they are, and they get pleasure from taking advantage, from controlling others, from pushing others, and they have no remorse at all. And that's just how it is. But everyone else, the people who are unconscious ones with just deep narcissist problems, and narcissism seems like a really big bad clinical thing. It just means you're doing stuff and you're telling yourself you're not doing it when you're doing it. It's unconscious behaviors. And For those people, most of them with enough work, whether it's deep meditation awareness, plant medicine, breathing exercises, therapy, near death, or something, they can wake up and just, wow, most of the time I'm going to be win-win. I'm going to help other people. And when I screw up, I'm just going to take credit for it and apologize and move on instead of hiding in shame and telling stories and deflecting and sabotaging and all the crap that I've dealt with. I've seen it from investors. I've seen it from board members. I've seen it from senior people. I've lost tens of millions of dollars in revenue from people literally who couldn't admit to themselves that they were losing money. So they look at the numbers and see numbers that weren't there because the idea of being able to be unsuccessful was so abhorrent that they just told themselves they were succeeding when they weren't. And then, I'm like, what the hell? You told me this. And they believed it when they told me, but it wasn't real. That's a trauma case. You can fix that. It's the one who knows they're losing money and tells you they're not so they can gather a paycheck and then laugh about it later. That guy's not fixable.
Before we roll into commercial, I want to ask you about you mentioned like that's a differentiator just now between an unsuccessful and successful entrepreneur. To be a successful entrepreneur, if you had any advice, and the reason I pose it this way is as a, broad as it may sound to ask you for just blatant advice, is because I feel like after your experiences, there may be some top key points to anybody listening right now who's interested in starting a business and or has a current business and maybe struggling in certain areas. If you had big, learning objectives and things that you would tell other people to tap into as an entrepreneur, what would those be?
The number one mistake that small entrepreneurs make is they do everything themselves. And this is why the vast majority of companies never cross $1 million. So my first thing, especially for women entrepreneurs, is who washes your socks? Okay, if it's you, you're a bad entrepreneur. Sorry, that's just how it is. Okay, you are trying to build a business. You're working hard on all this stuff, and you're going to take your valuable time and you're going to do the drudgery, right? Unless washing socks makes you genuinely happy and full of energy, in which case you can wash mine too, right? It's one of those things, and the amount of just like relaxation that I'll see in a room, especially when I talk to women entrepreneurs, it's like, look, you don't have to do everything. And we have this idea that we have to do everything. You should take the things that take the most energy to do, and the first thing you do is you get them off your plate. So I think your first hire as an entrepreneur is almost certainly going, if it's not a revenue generating person, it's almost certainly going to be an affordable executive assistant who can just take the little crap out of your life so that instead of you checking in 3 times to find a mutually acceptable calendar appointment, someone else does that so you can focus. That is such a precious thing. So stop doing everything. And number 2, hire the stuff you hate first. And if you just do those things, even if it's not something that maybe some other entrepreneur would do, like, look, I don't like accounting. I have a degree from Wharton, right? It's a finance school. I really don't like that stuff. That's why I hire finance people. Otherwise, I'd do it myself if I loved it, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Holy moly! Well, those 2 ones are. I think that's all people need to get started for sure.
Yeah.
We're gonna roll into a quick break from our friends at Barcode, but really quickly though. So Barcode is a huge fan of yours, Dave, and something that I wanted to ask you on behalf of them is if you had any thoughts on magnesium. I've been hearing a lot about it, and when I first was introduced to them, it's a hydration supplement drink and somewhat of a performance energy drink. But when I think of magnesium, it's almost one of those things where like you would think it just comes from another planet, and why the hell would you put it into your body? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Magnesium is near the top of the top 10 list of supplements that I have on my blog on daveasprey.com. And it's one of those things where 90% of people are deficient. It's involved in energy production and sleep. And in my book on anti-aging, How to Live to 180, I published a new study that had just come out that talked about when magnesium use is highest in the body. It turns out it's the middle of the day. So you should take half your magnesium in the morning, and you should take it again at night. The one in the morning is going to give you energy. At night, it's going to give you better sleep and relaxation. So magnesium is a non-negotiable supplement for you.
Well, you all should go look at that. Here we go into a commercial break. We will be right back, my friends. Activation in and of itself is such an exciting term that I've come to learn over the past couple of years. I told you this when I met you, but as a 25-year-old, watching someone like you know as much as you do, I get very excited to be your age. And if you're going to be 180, I want to be 180 with you. But before that, when it comes to what you've built not just with Bulletproof and Upgrade Labs, but with your brand as Dave Asprey, the thought leader, entrepreneur, author, and you encompass so many different things. But when you thought about something cool or like a new idea, and activating that, can you just walk us through that process? Because I think a lot of times now when people think of planting any type of movement around an idea or something that they want to come to life in this world of ours, there's just reservation based on, like, I don't know, pre-existing, thoughts or experiences, to your point earlier, trauma. But can you tell us a little bit about activating a lot of what you've been building?
The first thing to understand is that ideas, they're a dime a dozen. I mean, literally, they're all over the place. I have 6 companies in my portfolio. I'd have 7 more if I could find the right people to run them and make them happen. So a big part of this is understanding you don't have to do it all. You have to find the people to do it all. This is what lets entrepreneurs scale. They don't ask, how are we going to do this? They ask, who is going to do this? And this is not something you learn in business school. And it's not something that really is teachable until you just see it in action, or maybe you hear it on something like this. The other thing that you're doing amazing, Justin, at 25 is something I didn't really pick up till really probably closer to my early 30s. And you know who Mark Andreessen is?
I do not, sadly.
All right. So Mark Andreessen runs a big investment firm called Andreessen Horowitz. It's a famous, large Silicon Valley venture fund. But back in the day, he was the guy who made the first web browser. Okay. So at the time, I wrote an article that reviewed the first web browser, and I was the first guy to sell anything over the internet. So before e-commerce had a name, I sold a caffeine t-shirt out of my dorm room to 16 countries and got written up in Entrepreneur Magazine when I was 23. So Mark is 23, I'm 23. Okay, he does some cool thing on this tiny web thing no one's heard of. I do something cool on the web thing, something that's not heard of. Okay, first web browser, first e-commerce, equivalent cool shit, right?
Yeah.
Well, Mark Andreessen gets on an airplane from Illinois, goes to Silicon Valley, sits down with the CEO of Sun Microsystems, a major tech company at the time, and says, "Hey, Jim, will you teach me?" And Jim goes, "Hell yeah." Okay, Mark is a multi-billionaire today. What did I do? I said, I'm so tired of sending these things out of my dorm room, but I'm not going to ask for help because asking for help was a sign of weakness. So I didn't accept or seek mentorship or advice or learning from others because I was too stubborn, which is another word for fear. So kudos to Mark. He played it right. I will say that I shipped my cloud computing offering before cloud computing had a name one day before Loud Cloud, his company, did. So I'm going to claim that I won by one day, but he won by 6 zeros in his bank account or something. So that's all good, right? That's the difference between learning like you are in this conversation, seeking out mentorship. So my advice for young entrepreneurs is, seriously, there's a lot of people who've done it before and they would love nothing more than to keep you from making all the mistakes they did. Because no one listening will ever know the amount of sweat and pain and suffering and loneliness that comes from building something that I built. Because the other thing they don't tell you is that you're building a team, okay? They're all your friends, except you can fire them. The people you can fire are not actually your friends. They're your teamwork. They're your team, your coworkers. You can love them. They can love you, but there's always an inherent power balance. And there are also people where you just can't sit down and say, you know what? I'm really worried about this. Because if you do, it's going to ruin your company culture, right? So that's part of the hard part of being an entrepreneur. And the way you solve that is either you have a really good therapist or you have a really good CEO coach, or you have a really good mastermind networking group, something like the YPO has these forums.
Right.
But to get in YPO, you need to have started a company that does 10 million plus in revenue. So they do it. But there's various levels of this where you just need a safe space where it's not your company. And you say, I'll just go tell my family. Non-entrepreneurs don't know anything you do, and everything you say will either scare them or make them feel jealous. So you can only talk with a very limited number of people about it. So you have to cultivate those relationships. And if you do that, you'll have scalability and you'll have good advice. And if you don't do that, you'll run into walls and there's no one you can tell when you run into a wall, and you can't even say ouch because it'll scare people who work for you.
Ouch. You said, and I had this actually at the top of our conversation, but it's like, just didn't come up yet. But Dave, none of us have probably seen your failures, or I'm sure you've talked about it. openly to some extent, either at a fireside chat or on a podcast like this, but if you could give us one of the biggest failures you've experienced that added the most
Hmm.
value to in your life as an entrepreneur.
When I was 26, I made $6 million, and this was late 1900s dollars. That's about $18 million. Thanks inflation, about $18 million
Yeah.
a day is money,
Yeah.
and I lost it 2 years later. And here's how I lost it. I had risen in my career to the point where I was the only so I'm 26. The company's worth $36 billion publicly traded. And I'm allowed to attend board meetings, the only non-executive allowed in there. But the rule is I can't speak, but I got to do it to learn. And I got to do it because I was running technology strategy for M&A stuff. Like I needed to be there for some of them.
Mhm.
And so that meant I was an insider. I had learned how to sell stock options, what all the Bitcoin traders are doing today. Back then you could sell stock options and buy stock options, do advanced options trading. So I hedged my company stock, which is a very sane thing to do when you have $6 million. Well,
Mm.
I taught all the other executives how to hedge their stock. And then the general counsel came along and said, Dave, you have to unwind your position. Now, he said, you can't do this. So no one else admitted they'd done it. I said, well, of course I did it because I was doing the high integrity thing. What I should have done was hired an attorney and said, you know what, I'm not doing this. I had permission from the right person. The fact is I'm not going to do this. But I didn't, because I had the sort of maybe I did something wrong. I don't want people to criticize me. I just want people to like me. If I would have just called an attorney, the attorney would have said, Dave, tell your employer to go F themselves.
Yeah.
And if
Probably.
I'd have done that, I would have God knows how much money right now. As it was, I unwound my position and I basically took most of the profits I ever made and I had to get rid of them. And then I watched the company tank while I was blacked out. I could have also quit my job and sold all my stock the next day and walked with millions of dollars. So what I'm going to say, my mistake then was, you should always take money off the table when you have a chance. Always just take half the money off the table. There's nothing wrong with doing that when you have a big gap up. If I'd have just sold half the stock that I could have and pocketed the money, it would have been a really good idea. The second thing is that entrepreneurs will typically, like me, invest in other early stage, high risk startups because that's the way we live. You probably should invest in something that is the exact opposite of that. So you should have a good investment advisor. And as an entrepreneur, you learn this. So you should take some of your cash and you should put it in things that you hate that someone else doesn't hate so that they can figure it out. So I don't like public markets because they're dumb and it's all like herd behavior and I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. I love what Elon's doing. I don't think Tesla's worth more than God. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's not rational, but I also recognize throw a bunch of stuff in a diversified portfolio. And even though it's abhorrent to me, it's probably a good strategy over the long term for some portion of what I do. And I am an investor advisor to a bunch of people. I have an investment portfolio where some of my companies are 20, 40x returns, but I also have lots that go to zero. So, but you shouldn't be doing that when you're 25 or 30, but you're going to want to do it with all of your money. And I know a lot of people who had a big win and now they have nothing because they couldn't stop. That's a really important learning. And in my case, I could have gone on when I was 26 and been excessively wealthy at the time and built from there. As it was, I had to work for another 10 years to get back.
I think all of us need water after that one. That was that. Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people can learn from exactly what you said, because if you think about it, like looking back now, they always say you can't really connect the dots until they're behind you. And I can already tell that was totally it for you as well. Like you would have to gone through those situations to even realize that that's what you would have learned from it,
There's another one, Justin. How many people have you had to fire?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, nobody. I not yet. Not yet.
Exactly. So this is the other thing for entrepreneurs to learn. When you fire someone, you are helping them. It's an act of service. You're not hurting them. They might cry and they might tell you you're a bad person, but you're helping them. The reason is by the time you want to fire them, they know they're failing and it hurts, but they don't want to let go. And when you allow them to stay when they're failing, they are harming the people who are doing good work. So your team, who it's your job to take care of, they're getting harmed. And the person who you allow to stay past their time is getting harmed. So you have to put on the big boy pants and say, you know what? I'm going to do the hardest part of being an entrepreneur. And I'm going to look this person in the eye and I'm going to say, it's not working out. Right. And I don't like the situation and you don't like the situation. And I'm willing to help you find, whatever's next for you, but it's not here. And that's the kind way. And sometimes if they've really screwed up, like, sorry, you're terminated. There's various ways of doing it, but you've got to be very comfortable with that. And the second part of this, the first time that you think you should fire someone, you are correct. And if you would just take action on that, it will save you millions of dollars and thousands of hours of pain. In your gut when you should fire them. And then your mind will say, but I need them, but they do this. And then the way you get around that is you say, what would happen if a bus hit this person? Would the company survive? And the answer is almost always yes. And if the answer is no, you need to take out a big key man policy on them and hire a second in command to work with them so that you have redundancies. So the way I learned that, I was dealing with a direct report who ran most of one of my companies for me. And this person was dropping into those narcissistic behaviors, blaming other people, undermining other people, including me. And it's very hard to see that because you feel like you're crazy. And when I had a good read on this, I figured out what was going on. I talked to an entrepreneur mentor friend who runs a $500 million business. And he literally at an event, he just laughed and he handed me his phone. He said, Dave, are we going to use my phone or your phone to call and fire that employee right now? And I said, what do you mean? And he walked me through the conversation I just had with you. And it was some of the best advice ever. And of course, I didn't take it. It took me another 3 months to do it. And it was a very expensive 3 months before I pulled the trigger. And then I asked him, hey, where did you learn this? And he said, Jack Welch. I said, what do you mean? He said, I got to know him 10 years ago and I can call him and ask for advice when I want. Jack Welch, the CEO of GE, the very storied exec. So there are networks of execs who want to do stuff like that. I'm lucky I got good advice and I'm lucky I get to pass it on.
Pass it on. Yeah. Well, you did that with the 2 stories you just gave us, Dave. Thank you. I want to be very respectful of your time here. So we'll pivot out of entrepreneurship, my friends. And I want to ask you, Dave, about maybe one thing that people don't necessarily know about you. I think there's a lot that we've learned from you and that we've seen of you. But if there's one thing that most people or anybody doesn't know about Dave Asprey, what would that one thing be?
I was once bitten by a vampire bat.
I can't tell if you're joking.
The look on your face is great. No, I woke up when I was a kid with a vampire bat biting me right here, feeding on me.
Wait, vampire bat meaning like those are the ones that turn into vampire? I don't even.
No, it's an actual species of bat that bites you and eats your blood. They're not native to the U.S., but I was asleep in a cabin and I woke up with one. It must have come in on bananas and it was feeding on my neck. That's why I'm a night person, I guess. I don't know.
I was gonna say maybe that goes into your night person. That's actually how you really get that good sleep we talked about at the beginning of this conversation.
That's why I don't need sleep. No. I'm not saying that's one of those things, but there's a lot of people don't know. I've been through various types of energy medicine, energetic practices, advanced yoga, 5 years of art of living, breathing. I've been through shamanic training with Alberto Villoldo. I talk about these on my show. I'll just say, don't underestimate the feeling and energetic side of being an entrepreneur. Because when you're tapped into stuff from below your head, your heart, your gut, and things like that, they'll guide you, at least to a certain extent. You can't run everything on those, but the very best investors and the best executives, they'll look at something and they'll think about it. They'll do a spreadsheet. Okay, that looks good. But if the spreadsheet looks good, but the gut says no, you walk away. If the gut says yes and the spreadsheet says no, you probably walk away. And there's a few times where I'll tell you, what I did at Bulletproof is I created 3 different billion-dollar categories that didn't exist. So functional coffee, maybe that's not quite $1 billion yet, but coffee that's a performance enhancer versus just coffee.
Yeah.
That was a big category, and it's one that has many players now. All of them are knockoffs, but many players. The collagen industry and the MCT oil industry. So these are all tiny or non-existent markets. and the market for clean coffee was zero. Okay. If I did the spreadsheet, like it's a market size of zero. Why would you want to do something like this? And I said, well, A, I want to use it myself and I like coffee. But B, I don't know, but I think it's there. So I felt it in my gut. And because a lot of what I do is actually, I'm a futurist. Like there's a reason I'm the first guy to sell something over the internet because I could see it.
Yeah.
Right. So as a futurist, like I know it and I know it in my bones and I don't care what the spreadsheets say. If I'm wrong, I'll just stop selling it, and I'll lose whatever, $50,000. So that felt sense is terribly, terribly important, and it is trainable. And it's one of the reasons I have 40 years of Zen, my neuroscience company, because you can train that intuition. And a lot of what I do, it's in altered states. High performance is an altered state. And as an entrepreneur, half the creative stuff you do, you don't even know what your mind's doing. But if you could see it, like you can with EEG, you as, wow, I'm not doing what normal people do right now. I'm in entrepreneur creative mode. So just understand and honor that. And you need to have some kind of an energetic meditative practice in order to hone that skill.
You're so cool, Dave. I will say that every time I get any FaceTime with you, FaceTime being Zoom time right now. But my final question for you, and then we're going to wrap into everything that's coming up with the franchise and the podcast. I would love anything that we can go where from this podcast to then find you more than we already have. But your personality is something that I personally, when I met you, gravitated towards, because I met a lot of people in your, not just in your category of high profile, but then anybody who's anybody nowadays, and someone as busy and who could be in very much an overwhelming schedule like yourself, still gives people such great attention and positive energy. And like, you have like all the humility in the world, which is absolutely admirable. But I wanted to bring that as we close this podcast up, because that's not, number one, it's hard to find. Number two, I'm sure as hell it's hard to become that kind of person. But how and why have you become this version of Dave Asprey after so long? The one that's witty, you're fun, you have so much humility, you give people grace, and anybody who taps you on the shoulder for your signature, you gave a sticker to and then signed.
The stickers were fun at the conference. I don't know. I used to be a pretty angry person. I've probably been in 100 fistfights. When you're the biggest guy, I'm 6'4". I used to be fat. The smallest kids will always come after you. It's called Napoleon's complex, and they've got something to prove, and you always want to take down the big guy. Now, Napoleon's complex doesn't come with physics. So I'm like, you realize I can sit on you and you can't do anything about it because I'm 100 pounds heavier than you. And they're like, I'm going to get in a fight with you. And so we both end up in the principal's office. And I can tell you, I didn't lose any of those fights, but I got in a lot of them. And it was usually my mouth started them, and then they'd start it physically because I was a jerk. I had to do my own work. And recognizing that you're in a state of anxiety, if you're always in it, you won't know. And I didn't know it. And in my case, there was like early, like birth level trauma, like full on PTSD. I was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. So you come into the world thinking something's trying to kill you, but you're not thinking it because your brain isn't there. You're feeling like something's trying to kill you. So you're always looking for threats way more than you need to. So I had to deal with all that stuff. And in order to be who I am today, it's a huge amount of work. Most of it has been done with the 40 years of Zen kind of technology. The neurofeedback is the fastest path, but I've spent 3 months learning from the masters in Nepal and Tibet and meditating and studying there. I've been to South America. I did plant medicine ceremonies before it was a tourist thing. I went down and like, you're white. This is for local people. Why would you ever want to do that? You'll throw up. This is a bad idea. This is in Peru. And I'm like, I don't know. I read about it in a book. I just wanted, like, I felt called to go do that. And now I think it's actually overdone, especially ayahuasca. Well, maybe you should start with mushrooms at least. But that whole side of it, you need to do something. And probably the book that's most relevant, Justin, that I've written is called Game Changers. And I interviewed 500 people like me. And I used statistics to say, what do we all have in common as best practices? And there's 46 of them that came out. And one of the laws in that book is called get outside your head. And you need some way to get outside of yourself so you can have the ability to practice introspection. And then you realize, geez, I'm reactive all the time. And then you look for a way. And usually when we're young, we look for a way to think our way out of a feeling, which you can't really do.
Mm,
That's like cognitive behavioral therapy. It works for some things, but not for many. And then the other thing to do is to reset the programming. And that's
mm,
what I've spent most of my time doing. And I find neurofeedback or breathing exercises, or for some people, for some cases, occasional psychedelic use can be really beneficial for it. But you got to find a
mm.
way to do that. In my case, I think that it comes just from relentlessly, anytime I'm feeling reactive about something, going, where's that coming from? And going in and playing whack-a-mole with it.
Mm. Whack-a-mole. We're going to
Yep.
whack this mole. We're out of time, my friends. If you tuned in, I want to thank you so much for being here. Dave, I want to thank you for your time, your energy, your thoughts, your knowledges, your experiences, and your stories, but ultimately for being who you are. Because unless someone in the world steps out and up like you have, we wouldn't know these things exist. We wouldn't even try to tap into the biohacking space or to challenge certain processes of the human experience. And so I want to thank you for educating us over the last, I will say, hour. Listen, y'all. He gave us almost an hour, which is a lot of time in Dave Asprey world. But before we go, the Upgrade Labs franchise expansion, and then the new Human Upgrade podcast, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a rebrand from the Bulletproof brand. So,
Yep.
where are those going in 2022? You're like the second to last episode to launch on this show in
Oh,
2021,
sweet.
but in 2022, where are those going?
So my podcast has had about, at this point, a little bit more than 250 million downloads. It's in the top 0.1% or something of podcasts, which is amazing, given that it's a passion project for me.
Yeah,
And
congratulations.
so I renamed it to the Human Upgrade because Bulletproof is about food and coffee and stuff, and this is about upgrading all the aspects of yourself. So it's a sizable podcast, world class guests, and I'm having a great time with that. So I'm really doubling down on it. I'm doing individual interventions with people where I'll go in and solve a specific problem, and we publish that as an episode. So you can do learning on how to think. And
Mm,
then the Upgrade Labs expansion, my goal is to have 100 locations over the next about 18 months. So if you're in one of the states where we're approved for the franchise thing, you go to upgradelabs.com/franchise. And this is an opportunity to open an Upgrade Labs where, yeah, you can get 8 times better cardio than you did, 3 times better muscle, and hack your brain and fix your
mm,
metabolism in less time than it would take you just to go to the gym today. So
mm,
that kind of a thing, I think entrepreneurs in particular are going to want an Upgrade Labs in their neighborhood because it gives you your time back and it gives you your
mm.
energy back. And to me, those are the most precious things we have. And given all the nonsense going on globally right now around just, I will say, stealing power from people and then not giving it back, our stress levels
Mhm.
go up. So our recovery levels and our energy levels have to go up. So we maintain equilibrium. And so I think it's more important now than ever.
I couldn't agree more. Dave Asprey, thank you. Thank you for always saying yes to me, trusting me with this conversation, and being this week's man of the hour, my friend.
Thank you, Justin. Have an awesome day.
Thank you. I know you have to run, but we always start the podcast episode with our guest's name. So if you just do like a 15-second hit and look into this camera, where is it? Hold on, right there, and just mention you're Dave Asprey, you're this week's man of the hour, and then maybe a snippet of what we talked about, if that makes
All
sense.
right.
Okay.
I'm Dave Asprey. I'm this week's Man of the Hour. And we're going to talk about all of the things that give you more power to be an entrepreneur.
You're the best. Dave, seriously, thank you for everything. This was like, you're always so educational.